Welcome in. This is Chiefs Chase. My name is Mike Bassano, and thank you so much for joining me here on the Midweek Blitz.
The third part has already begun. This one leaves you in awe. Makes you believe, if only for a second. That familiar thing might not be familiar at all.
And the Chiefs Kingdom
Must be
has started its own history class.
magic.
The Midweek Blitz is where we cover everything Kansas City Chiefs, every storyline throughout the week, and get you ready for the upcoming game. Now, this week, there is no upcoming game because the Chiefs have a bye. They're so dominant that they have a bye. They don't have to worry about the wild card round with all the peasant franchises. The Chiefs get to sit back and wait for the divisional round. And they were so dominant this year, they didn't even have to have a final showdown to make that happen. They just had to rest their starters and lose 38-0 and still maintain the number one seed. So we don't even have to worry about whether or not the Chiefs win this week, but we will focus on who they would want to win this week. Also, we'll have a show Sunday right after the Bills and Broncos game, because after that game, we'll know for sure who the Kansas City Chiefs are going to face in the second round of the playoffs. So we'll do a show right after that. But there are so many things, so many topics to get to. Coaches, players, news galore, including Steve Spagnuolo. Big news surrounding the Chiefs defensive coordinator that we'll get to here in just a few minutes. But first, Travis Kelce is heated. Travis Kelce on the New Heights podcast had to answer to allegations that the Kansas City Chiefs threw the game because they're afraid of the Bengals, and he didn't like it.
I ain't scared of nobody. I wanted them in the playoffs. I want to slay every dragon one by one, like Mortal Kombat. I don't even want this to be like we play the lowest seed. Just give me the best teams. AFC, NFC. Give me all of them, Mortal Kombat style. I'll go through every one of them, giving them my best effort.
You didn't want to see the Bengals in Burrowhead or in Cincinnati.
I'll play them at the Walmart parking lot.
Travis Kelce ain't putting up no guff now. Don't you come around, Travis, and start throwing that shade out there. Look, let me tell you this. This is the best thing that could possibly happen for Travis Kelce, the best thing that could happen for the Kansas City Chiefs, because people tend to forget playoff Travis Kelce is a totally different animal. I don't care what you think he did during the season. When the playoffs come, Travis Kelce is an absolute animal, and he's untouchable by any other player, not just tight end, any other player in the NFL. He has the most touchdown receptions in the history of football in the postseason, just surpassing Jerry Rice last year. This man is an unstoppable force in the postseason, and you want to light a little fire under him and tell him that he's scared of the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that they've crushed ever since they muttered the words Burrowhead? No, I don't think so. Now, it might have been the right strategic move, right, to not necessarily throw the game, but to keep all your starters out and run a vanilla game plan. That's the correct strategic move, but it's not because they're scared of the Bengals. Going all out to win a game that doesn't improve your seeding is the dumbest thing you could ever possibly do in the NFL. Could you imagine a world where Andy Reid starts Patrick Mahomes against the Broncos in a game that can't improve anything for the Kansas City Chiefs? And then Mahomes goes down and the Chiefs have to roll with Carson Wentz in the divisional round of the playoffs because Andy Reid wanted to have something in the spirit of competition? He'd be the dumbest coach in the history of time. And Andy Reid is one of the smartest coaches in the history of time, which is why he didn't do that. He played Carson Wentz and all the backups because he's a smart person and not an idiot. So the Bengals can come out and say, we want to have an investigation. That's just sour grapes from a fan base that's never won anything. Frankly, you understand it because they're sad. They're sad they haven't won. So they want to go, no, we're being screwed. Look, the Bengals had a full season to not suck and they couldn't pull it off. I'm so sorry for you. But don't come around calling Travis Kelce and the Kansas City Chiefs scared just because you couldn't get it done. Because that's the reality. The Bengals fans can be upset all they want to. They can sign petitions asking for an investigation all they want to. But in the end, the absolute fact is the Cincinnati Bengals didn't make the playoffs because of the Cincinnati Bengals. Win more games. That's the saddest part. Like that, you know what it is? The Cincinnati Bengals are an OnlyFans girl. They can't take accountability for anything. Every problem that's ever happened for their team is somebody else's fault. It's not that their defense couldn't get it together to play up to the level of Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. No, it's that the Chiefs screwed over the Bengals. No, you screwed yourselves over. Play better. Allergic to accountability. That's the Cincinnati Bengals, man. I'm telling you right now. So Travis Kelce's heated, and Mahomes, he's already getting all the petty stuff, man. He has the Pro Bowl snub. People are calling Mahomes overrated, saying Travis Kelce is washed. A lot of people are even saying that the Kansas City Chiefs, if the referees had called the games right, they would be 500, which is just an absolutely ignorant statement from people who really didn't watch any of the games. They just watched the clips that were posted on the internet. They didn't see all the bad calls against the Chiefs, including in the Bengals game, that the Chiefs overcame, because that's what champions do. They don't sit there and cry about it and let the bad call ruin their entire game and ruin their season. No, they overcome it on the next one. Even going back to last year, quick story. Last year, 49ers, ticky-tack defensive holding penalty in overtime against the Chiefs. That kept the drive alive. It was a third down penalty, right? Third down, 49ers get the ball first in overtime. Ticky-tack holding penalty that you've never seen called gets called. And then that keeps the drive alive for the 49ers. So what do the Chiefs do? Do they go complain to the referees? Do they go cry about it and say, oh, the whole world's against us. We don't know how to take accountability for anything. No, they pull it together. They get a stop. They hold the 49ers to a field goal. They get the ball back, drive down, and score a touchdown to win it, because that's how champions operate. Champions don't sit there and cry to the referees. They overcome bad calls and win games. That's why the Kansas City Chiefs are the number 1 seed. That's why they're a dynasty, and that's why they are back-to-back champions. 3-peat incoming, baby. Get ready for it, because that's how champions work. It's a mentality. And I'll tell you, the one thing you don't want to do is just keep talking. Like, you know, Patrick Mahomes obviously gets very motivated by negative talk about him. And clearly so does Travis Kelce after his little explosion on New Heights this week. So the one thing you don't want to do with this Kansas City Chiefs team is give them motivation. And the one thing every team in the NFL is doing right now is giving the Chiefs extra motivation. So please keep talking. Please keep hating. Please tag Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes in all your posts trying to crap on the Kansas City Chiefs and talk about how they don't deserve anything or how they're scared, because that's only making the Chiefs better, and it's only making the players more focused. It's the absolute best case scenario for Kansas City. So please keep chirping. Now, there's proof that the refs are not favoring the Chiefs. We'll get to that, as well as the crazy allegations thrown around about whether or not the Chiefs threw the game against the Bengals. I actually have a way to prove whether or not the Chiefs threw the game. I'll tell you what that is here in a few minutes. But first, Steve Spagnuolo is getting head coaching opportunities and interviews right now, and I got to tell you, I am livid. I'm like a dog guarding their food. I don't want anybody to talk to Steve Spagnuolo, but it looks like right now the Jets, the Raiders, and the Jags are all in on Spags, and I want to do anything possible to keep Spags in Kansas City. I think Spags deserves a statue. I'm willing to give him anything. Give him all the money, give him all the stuff, give him a key to the city. I don't care. Steve Spagnuolo revolutionized this franchise. As much as Andy Reid did, and as much as Patrick Mahomes did, Spags came in 2019 for Bob Sutton after an atrocious 2018 defensive campaign and instantly turned the Chiefs defense around. He brought in Frank Clark, Tyrann Mathieu, changed the mentality, changed the focus, and suddenly the Chiefs went from having a really rough defense where Patrick Mahomes had to throw for 50-plus touchdowns just to win games to dominant. 3-time Super Bowl winning defense that's able to shut teams down on a consistent basis. That's a huge part of this dynasty formula, so I would be willing to do anything to keep Steve Spagnuolo in Kansas City. Now, I understand he's 64 years old. He has maybe one more chance for a long-term head coaching gig, and the time to strike would probably be now. So for Steve Spagnuolo, if he is like, look, I've accomplished everything I can accomplish as a defensive coordinator. I've won 4 Super Bowls, 3 with the Chiefs, 1 with the Giants. And now I want to try to go take all of that and be the head guy. I want that. If that's the case, I very sadly say good luck to you, Steve Spagnuolo. Don't go to the Raiders. That's all I got. Stay out of the AFC West, please. But best of luck to you because you've been amazing to Kansas City, and I couldn't be happier to have Steve Spagnuolo as defensive coordinator of the Chiefs for the time that we've had him. And if this is it, it's been an incredible ride. And, best of luck to him if that's the case. So I'm torn. I'm torn because on a personal level, obviously you want what's good for Steve Spagnuolo and his family and what he wants as a person with a career. You know, it's like, hey, I've done a lot. Time for a new challenge. If that's what he says, no hard feelings, obviously. Very grateful for everything he did, but I'm very sad. And if he goes to the Raiders, I'm crestfallen. I don't think he'll go to the Raiders. I really don't. Just because who would want that job? I'm dead serious. This is a bit of a tangent. We'll move on from Spags, and we have some things to get to, including the allegations thrown around against the Chiefs. But just real quick, who wants the Raiders job? You're in an AFC West where you have Bo Nix, Justin Herbert, and Patrick Mahomes. And then you have Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh, and Andy Reid. Why would you ever want to go to the AFC West? If you want to coach the Raiders or play quarterback for the Raiders, I think you're insane. Every other division is less deadly than the AFC West. I would rather go anywhere than the AFC West if I'm a coach right now. Going to the Raiders is a sentence. It is a lifetime sentence because you're not going to win. The Raiders have no chance of turning their franchise around to be a juggernaut in the AFC West because there's just too much competition. They're too far away. They need a franchise quarterback. They need a phenomenal head coach, championship level head coach like Jim Harbaugh, like Sean Payton, like Andy Reid, who has the best resume out of all of them. So going to that Raiders job would just make you stupid. And I'm sorry, if Spags does that, I'm like, that's a poor career choice. However, the Jags, as of Thursday morning, the Jacksonville Jaguars are in on Steve Spagnuolo. That would be a very good job for him. You go to the AFC South, which is, iffy, right? You have the Texans, who are pretty good, but they've been flailing a bit. You have the Tennessee Titans. They're at the bottom of the barrel. You have the Jags. They're towards the bottom of the barrel, but they have things to like, right? There are pieces in Jacksonville. And you have the Colts, who, God, who knows, right? If Anthony Richardson could ever stay healthy, who knows? So it's tough to know what the AFC South is going to look like, but what the AFC West looks like. Stay the hell out of it. Little tangent there, but now back on track to crazy allegations thrown around against the Kansas City Chiefs. Did the Chiefs throw the game against the Denver Broncos? Did the Chiefs throw the game at Denver? Maybe. Probably. Now, how much did they throw the game? Did they just rest the starters and come out with a vanilla game plan? Okay. Or did they tell Carson Wentz to hold on to the ball until he gets almost sacked? Because it felt like every single play, Carson Wentz had no idea where to go with the football. He would drop back, deer in headlights. I want Chad Henne in as the backup quarterback. However, there is going to be one thing that tells us in the future whether or not the Chiefs told Carson Wentz to do that. If he's back next year. If Carson Wentz is back next year, then it becomes very clear to everybody that the Kansas City Chiefs told him, hey, drop back, hold on to the ball so we can see Vance Joseph's coverages and see how he adjusts as the play develops. Did they tell him to do that? If they did, we will likely see Carson Wentz back in Kansas City next year. If they didn't, his contract's up. So Carson Wentz will likely be gone at the end of this year. So I think that's the big question mark. Will Carson Wentz be back? If he's brought back, then I believe the Chiefs probably did tell him to hold on to the football that long. If he's not brought back, then Carson Wentz really did put up one of the worst performances in the history of the NFL. And to be fair, Carson Wentz hasn't had a really good season for 6 or 7 years. So it could be either one. We don't know. I mean, really, would you be shocked if Carson Wentz went out there and fell apart? He's done it in games that matter all the time. So it wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world if Carson Wentz went out there and melted down. But it also wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world if they told Carson Wentz, hey, we need to see how these coverages develop over time. So please, sir, please make sure that you hold on to the football, let those coverages develop as our play develops, and let us see what's going on. I think both of those things are very possible. I don't know. I'm not in the coach's room, and they certainly would never tell us, right? So the only way we'll really know is if Carson Wentz comes back to Kansas City next year, then yes, they threw it hard. But if he doesn't come back to Kansas City next year, I'd chalk it up more to Carson Wentz just falling apart. All right, that's an interesting thing to me. Like, we've covered some of this already because the Bengals fans want an investigation. Look, if Andy played the starters, it'd be the dumbest move in the history of football. I understand the worry about rust, but it'd just be the dumbest move ever. Because if someone gets hurt, you're immediately crucified. You know what I mean? You come out with a little bit of rust, it's like, yeah, you can knock that off. But if somebody massive goes down in a meaningless game, you're crucified, rightfully, as a coach for allowing them to play. That's just the way it is. And it's the way it'll always be, and that's okay. Now, there's one player who has a lot to prove, and he is geared up for the second round already. We'll tell you who that is coming up here in just a second, but there is a little bit of proof out there that the refs are not really helping the Kansas City Chiefs. If you watched that Vikings-Lions game, you could say the referees favor the Chiefs, but I have never once seen the Chiefs have the referees ice the opposing kicker. Never in my life have I seen that. And not that it really decided the game between the Lions and the Vikings, but it did make people go, what was that all about? You waited until right before they were about to kick the field goal before you picked up the ball, looked around, oh, was everything cool? Oh, okay. Then put it back down, throwing off the rhythm of the kicking team. That was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen because it didn't make any sense. So these guys iced the kicker for the Detroit Lions. So there's a lot of allegations out there right now that the Detroit Lions are favored by the referees, and so are the Chiefs because the NFL wants a Chiefs-Lions Super Bowl. I don't believe that to be the case. I think referees make mistakes, and I think when it's the Chiefs and the Lions, they put a microscope over those mistakes. Yes, they did ice the Vikings kicker. It was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen, but I've seen referees make stupid decisions nonstop all over football, not just in the NFL. Go to any level of football. You will see massive mistakes made by every single referee. And it's not because the games are rigged. It's because human error exists. We've become such a technologically based society that we forget. Human beings are flawed. They're imperfect. No amount of technology, no amount of little earpieces, and no amount of people in New York watching the game are going to take human error out of the game entirely. So people want to find a reason why the Chiefs and the Lions are the number one seed. So they decide to say, well, it's because the referees are favoring those teams. They're not. There are a lot of bad calls made all across the board. The Chiefs and Lions tend to overcome the bad calls made against them, and they tend to capitalize on the bad calls made against other teams. So that's what separates the Chiefs and the Lions. It's not the referees. It's the ability to capitalize in big moments. And that's something that you have to give a lot of credit to Andy Reid and a lot of credit to Dan Campbell for that happening. And a lot of credit to Patrick Mahomes because he tends to bail out the Chiefs every single time it seems like they're in dire straits by just taking off and running and getting a first down. So while you're giving a lot of credit to Andy, a lot of credit to Dan, also Jared Goff, Patrick Mahomes, a lot of credit for them overcoming things. To the defenses for overcoming, like the credit for why the Chiefs and Lions are the number one seed goes so far beyond referees. And it's such a reductive, ridiculous take by anybody to point at the Chiefs and Lions and point at some of the cherry-picked moments where they've had missed calls and say that's why they're successful. Because every team gets calls they don't deserve. The difference is the Lions capitalize on it. The Chiefs capitalize on it, and that's what makes them number one seeds. And the Chiefs, man, they're hated. The Chiefs are so hated everywhere now, and you know what? I remember when the Kansas City Chiefs weren't hated at all. I remember when nobody hated the Kansas City Chiefs, and it was awful. It was the worst because the Chiefs would just get kicked up and down the field every single week, and people would feel pity for me. They'd be like, oh, you're a Chiefs fan? That's cool. You guys got good barbecue there. That's all I would ever hear. About barbecue. Oh, barbecue. Now I hear about Patrick Mahomes and the evil empire of the NFL. I would much rather be known as the Patrick Mahomes evil empire of the NFL than the place where there's nice barbecue, nice people, and crappy football. Because for a long time, that's all it was. And so I'll take all your hatred. I'll take all your vitriol. Bring it all to me because I've been waiting my whole life for it, baby. Bring that hatred to me. Bring all your venom and sink it into me because the Kansas City Chiefs have been through a lot to get to where they are now. And if you think we're overconfident, arrogant fans, you bet your ass we are. I've waited my whole life to be overconfident. I waited my whole life to be able to tell you the Chiefs are better than your team and have it actually be true. So I'm not backing off of that. And frankly, I don't think any Chiefs fan in existence should back off of that. And you want to make excuses? Keep making them. I want more excuses. I hope Taylor Swift goes down in the playoffs and knocks down a pass at the last second off the sidelines and the referees don't throw a flag. That's what I want because I love having a dynasty that's hated because it is 10,000 times better than being a lovable loser because being a lovable loser doesn't get you anything. People like you. Cool. Hey, people really like our team. No, they shouldn't. If they really like your team, the team's not that good, dude. Like, that's the truth. The Chiefs used to be really lovable. Remember, like, the Dante Hall days and where the Chiefs, in the Dick Vermeil days? The Chiefs were so loved during the Dick Vermeil days. Do you know why? Because they had a really good offense that put up great numbers for fantasy football, and they never won any games. 5 years of Dick Vermeil, he was 0-1 in the postseason. That's atrocious. It's like, oh, because you didn't have a defense. Yeah, that's part of the damn game. Is to get a defense. And Dick Vermeil had no interest in it. So teams, NFL fan bases, they loved the Dick Vermeil Kansas City Chiefs. They were fun. They were exciting. They couldn't win. They're perfect. I love this version of the Kansas City Chiefs that everybody hates because they're not fun. They grind out games. They grind out in the big moments, and they show up big in the big moments to bury other teams in every single possible fashion, and that makes people hate the Chiefs. That's what you want. That's the goal. If you're picking first overall this year, if you're the Tennessee Titans or whoever screwed it up and let the first overall pick happen, if you're picking first overall this year, your goal is to one day be the most hated franchise in the NFL. Because right now, no one cares about you. They're like, oh, that's kind of a nice team. Oh, Tennessee Titans, cool. You know what people think about the Tennessee Titans? Nothing. Because they're bad. People hate greatness. It's a downside we have of society that people hate greatness so much, but they do. It's a fact. People like you on the way up. They hate you at the top. And that's where the Kansas City Chiefs are right now. Now, let's see. What else do we get here? One player needs this bye week for the Kansas City Chiefs more than anybody. One player. I'm gonna get a little water. But that's a big discussion that we're going to get into. That nobody's really brought it up, and I'm kind of shocked by it. So one player that needs this bye week, we'll get to it. But first, there's a player with a lot to prove who's already gearing up for the second round, and that man is DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins putting in work during the off week, and DeAndre has a chance to explode in these playoffs. He's such an absolute dynamic player by every definition, and his ability to create separation on third down has been so dynamic this year for the Kansas City Chiefs. He has been a game changer for this offense. Hollywood Brown coming back, huge. Xavier Worthy elevating to superstar status, huge. And the fact that we see DeAndre Hopkins putting in that extra work during the off week, oh man, that gets me fired up because he's one of those guys, man, when the postseason starts, those big star players, the Travis Kelces, the DeAndre Hopkins, those types of players, they come alive. It's a different level of motivation. It's a different kind of game. And when you're a veteran, it's easy to get a little bored during the regular season, but once that postseason hits, that switch gets flipped and the intensity gets turned up, and guys like DeAndre Hopkins, guys like Travis Kelce, they become complete animals, and that's what we're seeing. Travis Kelce's ticked at all the Bengals fans saying, I'm not scared of anybody, and DeAndre Hopkins is in Houston right now working out during the bye week to make sure he's in tip-top shape. Getting those guys extra motivation and extra fire going into the postseason, guys who are already complete monsters in the postseason, that is something that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to bank on this postseason. DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce are guys that I expect to go off as soon as the postseason play begins, because those two guys get a little bored during the season. It's just the truth. They do. It's hard not to. You're in your 30s. You've been doing this for a long time. You understand what's going on. But once the playoffs start, switch gets flipped. And guys who have always been in the league, who are veterans, who might be taking a few plays off here and there during the season, they lock in. We saw it last year with Travis Kelce. Playoff Travis Kelce is a different man. Well, playoff DeAndre Hopkins is a different man too. And we see it already. The extra work being put in and the extra motivation to come in and dominate during the Kansas City Chiefs divisional round. Right off the bat, make it happen. Especially if things go chalk and the Chiefs play Houston next week. DeAndre Hopkins is going to freaking explode. I can't wait for it, man. So DeAndre Hopkins putting in that extra work during the bye week, definitely something to keep an eye on, as when the playoffs start, veteran players like Kelce, like Hopkins, they tend to go off. Also, real quick, could be explosive. DeAndre Hopkins hits a different gear. He reminds me a lot of Andre Rison, which I know is a bit of an older reference, but Andre Rison in the late 90s, when he came to Kansas City as an older free agent, right? And he had come off a few seasons where he wasn't that great. He had bounced around since leaving Atlanta, and he ends up in Kansas City, resurrects his career. I think we could see that happen for DeAndre Hopkins. And I think if we do see that happen for DeAndre Hopkins, it will be in the divisional round, starting with this postseason run. Very intrigued for DeAndre when the postseason begins. Now, the best version of Patrick Mahomes has just arrived. Petty Mahomes, he's back, baby, and we'll tell you what he did coming up here in just a few minutes. But first, one player needs this bye week more than anybody. And I understand the bye week, we talk a lot about rust, resting your players. They have a long layoff between meaningful games, but there are a couple players who really need that long layoff. Nobody more than Isaiah Pacheco. He needs this bye week and time to get more healthy more than anybody on that team. Because I know he's healthy enough to play, but the guy has 8 screws and a metal plate in his leg. You can't expect a guy with 8 screws and a metal plate in his leg to come out right after his injury and run explosively. That's the thing. Isaiah Pacheco came back from injury and he didn't have the explosiveness because he has 8 screws and a metal plate in his leg. But now he has over 20 days to rest, get healthier, and not just be healthy enough to play like he has been, but be healthy enough to be explosive. That's who Pop is, man. Isaiah Pacheco runs hard. That's his MO. He runs like he hates the grass. That's Isaiah Pacheco. And we haven't seen that guy since he's been back from IR. So the hope is when Isaiah Pacheco gets this long 20-plus day layoff to go ahead and rest up, when he comes out in the divisional round, he'll have that explosive pop that we know Isaiah Pacheco has always had. So when he comes out with that explosive pop, it's going to change the entire game for the Kansas City Chiefs and change the entire face of the AFC playoffs, just like it did in 2022 and 2023. When the Chiefs got Isaiah Pacheco at running back, it changed the entire offense. And if he comes back with that leg at full strength, able to have the explosiveness that he had in 22 and 23, then the Chiefs are going to run teams over. And that's going to be the difference in the playoffs for the Kansas City Chiefs that leads them to a three-peat. I can't stress enough how important it is that Isaiah Pacheco get back to his original form and run angry, run mad, because that's what he does. And it's what makes him one of the best running backs in the NFL. When he's cooking, he is right up there with anybody else. But that injury really set him back. The hope is this time off completely heals him, or at least gets him to a point where he can have that explosiveness back. Because we've seen it. I mean, he's been struggling since he's come back from IR. Isaiah Pacheco is an incredible running back. But it's very hard, no matter how great you are as a running back, it's very hard to come back from an injury like this and have explosion. So this time off is going to be so important for Isaiah Pacheco. And when he comes back, harness that energy. I think it's going to be huge for Isaiah Pacheco and for the Kansas City Chiefs when he comes back with a little more explosiveness after this long layoff. Now, a couple more things to get to here, including predictions for the playoffs, but the best version of Patrick Mahomes just arrived. Petty Mahomes. Also, there's a crazy list. Before we get to that, there's a crazy list that has a Chiefs player on it. It's wild. I got to share it with you. There's not even really much of a take with it. It's just such a crazy stat. I'll get to it here in just a few minutes. But first, the best version of Patrick Mahomes just arrived. The best one, because Petty Mahomes is here, and you're all screwed. Antonio Pierce, fired by the Las Vegas Raiders. And Antonio Pierce, if you remember, he said that he wanted his players to take out Patrick Mahomes. He even used the old term from the Saints Bounty Gate where he talked about cutting off the head of a snake, which means taking out Patrick Mahomes and then the rest of the team just falls. That was Antonio Pierce. So when he got fired by the Las Vegas Raiders, Patrick Mahomes liked the post because Petty Mahomes is back. And let me be very clear about something. Petty Mahomes destroys everybody. Nothing works better than a pissed off Patrick Mahomes ready to dominate everybody. So please keep calling Mahomes overrated. Please keep snubbing him out of the Pro Bowl. Please do everything you can to bring Petty Mahomes to his final Super Saiyan form, because that is what we've been waiting for in Kansas City. Mahomes has been great all year, but when you give him that little extra motivation, that little ability to turn it up and get to that final Super Saiyan form, Patrick Mahomes is unstoppable. So Petty Mahomes, welcome back, baby. Like all the posts that denigrate Antonio Pierce, and get ready to run over everybody in the AFC playoffs, because all the motivation that's coming from everywhere. Travis Kelce's getting it. Patrick Mahomes is getting it. DeAndre Hopkins is getting it. All this extra motivation from all the haters, it's going to backfire on everybody, and the Chiefs are going to thrive off of it. We've already seen the return of Petty Mahomes, and when he's in his petty mode, he is unstoppable. I can't wait to see how Patrick Mahomes takes this motivation and uses it to crush the entire AFC, baby. It's going to be a blast. Did you see that? Like when I saw he liked it, it became a story. Like it was a story that Patrick Mahomes liked an Instagram post because of what Antonio Pierce had to say about Patrick Mahomes before. That's craziness. That's crazy. And that makes me so fired up, because it means that Patrick Mahomes is out here just ready to annihilate the opponent and ready to take every bad thing anyone ever said about him and remember it. That's the number one thing to pull away from this. Patrick Mahomes remembers everything. Antonio Pierce once, over a year ago, talked about cutting off the head of the snake and taking out Patrick Mahomes and letting the rest of the team crumble. And over a year later, Antonio Pierce gets fired. Patrick Mahomes likes the post, because he's petty like that. Patrick Mahomes doesn't forget anything, and he certainly hasn't forgotten being snubbed from the Pro Bowl. So look the hell out. I cannot wait for the divisional round to start, because Patrick Mahomes is in his petty mode, and that makes him a totally different beast that nobody can stop. The hell, people really can't stop him anyway, but it makes it even harder to stop him. All right, now we have predictions coming up for all the games. I'll do quick predictions there for every single wild card game. Come up here in just a couple of minutes, but first, I had to share this stat. Top 10 passing yards in the postseason. We won't go into the numbers, but the top 10 players in the NFL in passing yards in the postseason career. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, Joe Montana, Drew Brees, Patrick Mahomes, John Elway, Dan Marino. Before 30, though, Patrick Mahomes is in a top 10 passing yards in his career in the postseason with every player who's over 40 and retired. I mean, Rodgers is still around, but he's over 40 years old. Patrick Mahomes isn't even 30 yet, and he's top 10 all time in passing yards in the postseason. How do you not crown this guy the GOAT? How do you not already know what you see? I understand some people wanting to wait until the end of Patrick's career to say he's the greatest of all time, see how many Super Bowls he wins, how many records he breaks, how close does he get to Tom Brady. But I think if you use the eye test, Patrick Mahomes is already the greatest quarterback of all time. Every player in the top 10 passing yards and postseason list is over 40 years old, except Patrick Mahomes, who's under 30. How incredible is that? He is an absolute monster in the postseason, and people just forget. That's what this is. People just forget that Patrick Mahomes is an absolute beast by every definition in the postseason. That there are two Patrick Mahomeses. There's the Patrick Mahomes in the regular season, and there's a Patrick Mahomes in the postseason. Much like Michael Jordan, when the game is on the line and when the season is on the line, Patrick Mahomes turns into a completely different person. Almost an absolute cyborg of greatness that's unstoppable by every definition. We have not seen a player in crunch time as good as Patrick Mahomes since Michael Jordan. That is a fact. Top 10 all time. That's just awesome. All right, now the official predictions. My predictions for the AFC wildcard and the NFC wildcard. We'll do them all. First off, we're going to have Chargers-Texans. I'm taking Chargers. I think most people are taking Chargers. The Texans have been shaky. It feels like they won the AFC South a month ago, and they just haven't really locked in ever since. So the Texans have been shaky lately. I think, obviously, the Chargers have been hot. And anytime you get Jim Harbaugh in a situation, I just have to really kind of lock into Jim Harbaugh. I really do. I think Jim Harbaugh in big game situations has become a very good big game coach. So I got the Chargers over the Texans. Next up, Ravens, Steelers. I think most people are taking this too. Ravens, right? Does anyone believe in the Pittsburgh Steelers? Does anyone in Pittsburgh believe in the Pittsburgh Steelers? I think maybe Russell Wilson might be the only person who believes in the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Russell Wilson doesn't have a real personality. Every time you hear Russell talk, you're hearing a robot that he's created that he thinks the NFL will like. Unlimited. That's all he's doing. He's a creation. And I feel kind of bad for Russell Wilson for that. Like, I don't know if it was Pete Carroll early in his career or what it was, but for whatever reason, Russell Wilson has always had this air of fakeness. Be real, Russ. People will like you more. I'm just saying. That's just honest. If you're honest and you're authentic, people will like you more. They'll respect you for sure. But either way, the Steelers, I don't think the other players respect Russell Wilson. If I'm Mike Tomlin, I know this is crazy, but if I'm Mike Tomlin, I start Justin Fields. I tell nobody. And I start Justin Fields in the game. It'll throw off the Ravens entirely and give the Steelers a chance. With Justin Fields as a surprise starter, the Steelers have a shot. With Russell Wilson, I don't think they have a shot. So Ravens over Steelers, unless Tomlin pulls the WWE move. The WWE, by God, King, that's Justin Fields' music. If that happens, then I think the Steelers got a shot. Otherwise, Ravens all day. And then Broncos, Bills. I'm taking Broncos. I said it on Sunday. I'll say it again. I think the Broncos with their top 5 defense are better than the Bills in this game. I think the Bills defense is shoddy. It's leaky. They've had really bad games this year. The Broncos defense has been so tight. It's been so good, especially down the stretch of the season. And now that they have Bo Nix playing at a high level, the Broncos are a real threat. Like, everybody hates me for saying this in Chiefs Kingdom. I know that. I know I've heard from Chiefs fans since Sunday. I know you're upset about it, but I have to call it like I see it. I'm not going to lie. I'm not somebody, like, I think sometimes people expect me to, like, only say bad things about everybody but the Chiefs. A lot of times I'm going to do that because F everybody but the Chiefs. I 100% believe that. But when it comes to who's going to win this game, I got to look at it objectively. And objectively, I got the Broncos. And Bills fans think I'm hating. I'm not. Your defense isn't that good. And in the playoffs, the defense is really important. So if the Bills defense doesn't come out to play, I think the Broncos win that game. And I think the Broncos will. I really do. I felt it the whole way. So I think the Broncos beat the Bills. On to the NFC. We'll spend a little less time on this since they aren't going to play the Chiefs. But Rams over Vikings. I think coming back from that loss against the Lions, Sam Darnold looks so bad that I think he's going to lose some confidence. And more importantly, I think some players in the locker room are going to lose confidence in Sam. And that's going to be the undoing of the Minnesota Vikings. And then next year, the J.J. McCarthy era begins. Commanders over Bucks. I like the Buccaneers. I love Baker Mayfield. He's one of my favorite players. They can't beat good teams. So I don't think the Bucs win that game. I think the Commanders win it. And then Eagles over Packers. Because I think the Eagles are probably the best team in the NFL other than the Chiefs. I think in the NFC, I'm taking the Eagles over the Lions. Now, in the NFC Championship, if it turns out that the Lions and the Eagles are in the NFC Championship, that's different because it's in Detroit. Like, it's different. Like, I think the Eagles are a better team than the Lions, but in Detroit, that's a big shift. The energy in that building is palpable, and they want it so badly. Now, there could be a downside with that. We saw it in 2018 with the Chiefs. When the Chiefs went to play the Patriots in the AFC Championship, you could feel the pressure, right? You could really feel the pressure. But I think that happened to the Lions last year with the San Francisco 49ers. So now that they've had that loss, like the Chiefs did in the 2018 season, I would take the Lions to beat the Eagles because they're at home. Even though they don't have quite as good of a team, I think the coaching factor shifts. I think Nick Sirianni coaches like a drunk Eagles fan. Dan Campbell, in my opinion, Dan Campbell, if I had to rank him, easy top 5. Probably top 3. Like, Andy's number 1, clearly, but feel-wise, I might put him at number 2. It'd be like Harbaugh and Campbell at number 2 for me. I know, well, what's Jim Harbaugh accomplished? A lot. Jim Harbaugh, is everywhere he's gone, he's turned it around. Like, everywhere he's gone, he's made big waves happen and a big turnaround happen, and he just won a championship. So I have a lot of respect for Jim Harbaugh. I know a lot of people don't, but he's a big football guy. I'm a big football guy. If you love football, it's kind of hard to hate Jim Harbaugh. But yeah, that's how I see the NFC shaking out. Eagles over Packers, Commanders over Bucks, Rams over Vikings. Final thoughts on this. Enjoy the wild card weekend and enjoy watching who might be the Chiefs' opponent, because we won't know until the final game of the AFC who the Chiefs' opponent will be, because the final game is going to be the first game of the Sunday slate, the Bills and the Broncos. And if the Broncos win that, they're going to Kansas City. So we won't know until the very end of the last AFC game who the Chiefs' opponent will be. So enjoy the hell out of this wild card weekend. I know I will, as I will also be doing a show Sunday right after that Bills and Broncos game to discuss who the Chiefs are going to be playing in the divisional round. So thank you so much for joining me. This has been Chiefs Chase. As always, a ton of fun. I really appreciate you guys. I love that your follows, your comments, your messages, they're incredible. I love doing this. And I know I say this at the end of like every show, but it's sincere. It is very sincere. And I want to make sure that I don't just go, oh, well, I've said it already. No, I appreciate the hell out of you. And I appreciate your comments, your interactions, your follows, everything. I really appreciate you. So thank you very much for finding this show, for finding me, and enjoying it, because bringing you guys joy through talking about the Chiefs is like the best thing that could ever happen to me. So thank you. I appreciate you. I hope you have a phenomenal rest of your week. Stay safe. There's blizzards, there's fires, there's all kinds of stuff all over the country. So please stay safe and enjoy Wild Card Weekend. I'll see you on Sunday.